Thanks. So I'm going to teach this breathing technique that I learned from Rabbi Adam Klingfeld. It's very easy. And I'm going to encourage that you try it when we go into our meditation later. So I'll explain it, and then we can do it just very briefly, and then we'll move along. So I'm referring to this as a 3-2-1 breath. That is not what he called it. And what you do is you take one deep inhale through your nose, and then 3 exhales through your mouth, preferably, but could be through your nose. And then you repeat that 10 times. And then you do a deep inhale and 2 exhales. And again, you repeat that 10 times. And then 1 inhale and 1 exhale, hence 3-2-1. It's a way to remember it. So the way I've been practicing this week is using my fingers as my counters so that I'm not using my brain to count particularly. So I'm going inhale, exhale, 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 inhale, exhale, 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 and so on. So Rabbi Klingfeld suggests that this process really helps settle, so that when you move then into your natural breathing and into your meditation, you can really hear that still small voice inside, the kol demama daka. And I just think that, it's really possible that any controlled breath work that you do for 30 repetitions is going to bring you to that state. I don't know. So I'm not saying that this is anything magic, but I have been finding it very nice and a very good way to really, really settle. So I'm going to suggest that we do it now, only 2 rounds of each, the 3, the 2, and then the 1. And then I'll move on to talk about Pinchas, which is our Torah portion this week. So we inhale deeply, exhale, exhale, exhale. Inhale deeply, exhale, exhale, exhale. Inhale deeply, exhale, exhale. Inhale deeply, exhale, exhale. Inhale deeply, exhale completely. Inhale deeply, exhale completely. So that's what I'm referring to as the 3-2-1 breath. So this week's Parsha is named for Pinchas, who was a zealot who killed an Israelite man and his midnight lover. Now, to set the stage, we need to remember that the Israelite men were considered to be really easily led into idolatry by the very seductive midnight women. And Pinchas, who was Aaron's grandson, slays this pair, and we're told that he slays them out of zealotry and a love of God. And he ends up being rewarded by God in spite of what on the surface, and clearly to me, looks like a really rash, impulsive act of violence and revenge. The commentators point out that because of the idolatry of the Israelite men, the entire encampment was about to be punished by God. Indeed, I think that a plague had already started. And with this act on Pinchas's part, God withheld the punishment, the plague stopped, and life continued. So after this opening episode, the Parsha goes on to have a census, which involves the counting of all the men over the age of 20. And one of the purposes of this census was really to count how many people are going to be available for battle, should that be necessary, as the people approach the promised land. But the other part of the census was to figure out how the land was going to be divided, because it was going to be divided according to the size of each tribe. And we're nearing the end of our journey. We're approaching the promised land. So we need to start thinking about, well, what are we going to do once we get there? So then after the census, 5 sisters, Mala, Noah, Holga, Milcha, and Tirzah, approach Moses, the priests, and the entire assembly at the entrance to the tent of meeting. And they make their case that their father who died was an upstanding man, not part of Korach's rebellion. So we remember that from a few weeks ago. And they petition that they should be able to inherit their father's portion of land. So they do this in a really particular and, I think, very smart and politically astute way, actually using a lot of tools of community organizing, which I've been thinking about lately. So we're going to come back to that. They are respectful. They frame the issue in a way that the men can really understand and care about. And they're very clear. So in chapter 27, verse 4, it says in part, "Let not our father's name be lost to his clan just because he had no son. Give us a holding among our father's kinsmen." The result of this is that the sisters do get the inheritance, and the laws about inheritance end up being changed. The Parsha continues, but I'm actually stopping here because I want to focus on Pinchas and the Zelophehad sisters, these 5 women. So both Pinchas and these sisters experienced what I would consider to be righteous anger. They were aware of a wrong, and they were compelled to right that wrong. However, obviously, they went about this very, very differently. So I think Mala, Noah, Hogla, Milcha, and Tirzah are positively remarkable. So imagine what it must have been like for them in that time and place when women were practically not seen. They weren't counted in the census. They couldn't own property. They were always in the background, and they had the chutzpah to really stand up for themselves. It must have taken enormous courage, even to go to the entrance of the tent of meeting and confront Moses and the priests. And then to speak so clearly. No begging, no, please, may I beg your pardon? Would you kindly consider? None of that. They said, give us. They demanded respectfully and without stamping their feet and raising their voices and yelling. They didn't have a tantrum. They said, give us what's rightfully ours. And they said it in a way that the men could hear. They said, so our father's name is not lost. So this is, what I want to lift up in terms of the parallel to community organizing. They were not alone. They had each other to support the other. They knew what they wanted. They wanted the inheritance of the land. And they knew how, what was going to be important to the people who had power. First of all, I knew who had power was Moses and the priests. And they knew what would be important to them. We don't want names forgotten, the names of the men forgotten. So they used that. I just think it's pretty brilliant. So I just keep thinking about how it would be so nice to channel that kind of composure when I'm angry. And yeah, I think that they were angry. And what they had was a cool anger, one that could be managed and harnessed. And Pinchas did not. He was hot. He raged. And I think we're all capable of hot anger. And hot anger, erupts when we're not thinking and we're simply reacting. And so maybe we react like Pinchas did with rage, or maybe with some other kind of violence. And it could be physical violence or violence with our words. Or maybe our go-to reaction is withdrawing. But whatever it is, that's our kind of instinctual, habitual reaction, it's not helpful. The sisters were able to rely on each other, support each other. And if any of them had been filled with hot anger, the others were able to help temper it and cool it down. They were really able to use their anger to affect change. So my hope as we sit today is to remember that we have Pinchas energy in us. We also have the energy of Mala, Noah, Hogla, Milcha, and Tirzah in us. And maybe we can use our breath to tap into the inner wisdom. So when confronted with challenging situations, and God only knows there are so many right now, we can act with clarity and in alignment with our values. So as we take our seat, I invite you to check your posture and, sit so erect and so proud as though you were approaching that tent of meeting where the Mishkan is housed. It's a really holy and intimidating place. And I invite you to use that 3-2-1 breathing that we went over earlier. And use your fingers to do the counting. Do this in your own time and way, if you're so inclined. And we'll sit in silence for about 10 minutes. So I invite you to begin to deepen your breath. And gently begin to bring your attention outward. And as you are slowly coming back to the room, I'm going to read a poem by May Sarton. And the name of this poem is An Observation. True gardeners cannot bear a glove between the short touch and the tender root. Must let their hands grow knotted as they move with a rough sensitivity about under the earth, between the rock and the shoot. Never to bruise or wound the hidden fruit. And so I watched my mother's hands grow scarred. She who could heal the wounded plant or friend with the same vulnerable yet rigorous love. I minded once to see her beauty gnarled, but now her truth is given me to live. As I learned for myself, we must be hard to move among the tender with an open hand and to stay sensitive up to the end. Pay with some toughness for a gentle world. So welcome to those of you who I did not formally welcome before. Ruth and Lisa, happy to see you. And please unmute yourself if you have something you'd like to say. Harriet, go ahead.
So I can very, very much relate to the story of the daughters of Zelophehad and about claiming a name.
Excuse me, do you want to turn off the recording?
Thank you.